My son was dating Sabrina. They started in high school and broke up when they were in college. It was a long relationship and I became really close to her. She is, in my eyes, our daughter. Her family are awful people and she sees us as her parental figures. She even plans to have my husband walk her down the aisle when she gets married. Now, when they broke up, their relationship just died. We didn't drop her since she's our kid at this point. My son wasn't happy but moved on, so she got invited to family events for years. My son, now 27, is married to Bethany and she's a nice person. We never clicked, we don't have much in common and they live 2 hours away, so it's hard to plan stuff to get to know her more. It'll grow in time. Now, we had a picnic and all the family members were invited. So Sabrina was there as normal and I thought the night was nice. Bethany came up to me at the end of the night and expressed that she's uncomfortable with her husband's ex being everywhere and asked if I wouldn't invite her for family stuff. I told her no and that Sabrina is part of the family and has been part of the family longer than she has. If there's a valid reason, like her being rude, then I would consider this, but she's done nothing. She left and my son has called me an idiot for picking her over my now real family. Am I the idiot? My husband thinks she's crazy, but I know we can be biased. OP, maybe have your husband invite some of his exes to family events also. You shouldn't mind, right? Huge, you are the idiot. She's not your daughter. She's your son's ex, and it's weird to keep inviting her to family events when your son has moved on and married. It was extra rude to be so dismissive and nasty to Bethany when she was trying to open up about how uncomfortable she is. If you want to be friends with his ex, then do it when they're not around. Oh, come on, the ex has been in the family fold for years at this point. OP's husband will walk her down the aisle. OP thinks of Sabrina as her own child. She's done nothing wrong and shouldn't be disinvited from her family. Blood doesn't always make family. Bethany is being insecure, which happens, but OP is right that not inviting Sabrina to family events she's gone to for ages would say, I don't think you're my family anymore. OP, you can't win this one. This is the damn problem when people want you to love their spouse and partner like you do. They stop and then you're supposed to stop. When they did nothing wrong, you can't have it both ways. You can't have the benefits of a loving, warm, welcoming family who makes your partner feel like one of them, and have the kind of family who cuts people off on a dime because of boundaries, arbitrarily set when they want to bang someone else. Everyone's the idiot here. My family is in a similar situation, but in our case, I'm Bethany. I have never and will never ask my mother-in-law to stop seeing our version of Sabrina. I understand that they have a bond and it means a lot to them to see each other on holidays, but we deliberately don't see mother-in-law very often anymore. Whenever we're around at group events or just us visits, my mother-in-law brings up how amazing his ex is. She tells anyone who will listen that she wishes her son and his ex had worked things out because she doesn't like me as much. Bethany will never forget your blatant favoritism. Your son will never forget it either. I'm not saying that Sabrina needs to be uninvited to events. You need to put in more effort to make Bethany feel like her emotions matter to you. Be prepared to lose your son then and any future grandchildren that he might have. LOL. They'll have to content themselves with Sabrina's children as grandchildren until Sabrina's husband is weirded out that her ex's parents are around and keeps those kids away too. Let's be clear. You've chosen this girl over your son, not just his new wife. I hope Sabrina still hangs around when your son stops calling. Betcha she doesn't. Update, I will clarify that she may not be my kid by blood, but everything else. She is my daughter and has been for about 10 years. Also, Sabrina is engaged, so now she doesn't want to get back with my son and I don't want them to either. Yes, I have invited Bethany to do stuff with me. It's always been a no. I won't disown Sabrina by disinviting her to family events because that is actually what I would be saying. I'd be saying I don't see her as part of the family if I disinvite her to family events that she's gone to for about 10 years. This is asking me to choose between two children. I will not disown one. My cousin is in his late 20s. He was diagnosed with mild Asperger's syndrome some years ago. He's used that as an excuse to behave in a horrible manner ever since, and quite frankly, his parents have enabled him. He recently managed to push away his only remaining friends and then decided to turn his negative attention on our family. Highlights include calling the police and making a false report against my uncle and my nan, harassing my mom for days on end, and laughing at her when she begged him to stop because her hypertension, as a result, landed her in the hospital, wishing my father dead from a condition he's struggling with, etc. I blocked him preemptively because I could see where this was heading. Soon after he realized he was blocked, he called my firm and told them that I was leaking privileged information and breaking client confidentiality. Now, he had no proof, but because of the nature of our work, the partner had to investigate even the possibility. Obviously, that led to consequences at work for me, and while I've been cleared, it was hard and I missed the promotion window. My husband and I are furious, and he drafted a cease and desist notice for me and a notice that I would sue for defamation of character. I signed it and sent it to my cousin. Now his parents are saying I'm punishing the mentally unwell, and he didn't know what he was doing, nor does he have the money to pay for the suit. I'm not inclined to listen to them, but even my parents think I should have left it alone. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. His mental health isn't the issue. It's his enabling parents. Your cousin is purposely harassing you and your family, which comes with legal consequences, civil or otherwise. Have you considered including the parents in the suit? OP, you need to sue. He also needs adult protective services or someone to investigate. Mild Asperger. I'm sorry, but that's not the actions of a neurodivergent person with only mild traits. I, 39 female, have coexisting ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and ADHD. Asperger's is no longer a standalone diagnosis. It's all part of ASD. I do not act like that, and neither do my neurodivergent children. Either his parents have lied about the extent of his diagnosis, or he needs to be reassessed. Whatever your cousin's motivations are, they are not linked to mild ASD. I think the parents misunderstood the diagnosis. They were saying, our son is a massive idiot, not, our son has mild Asperger. Didn't know what he was doing? It sure sounded like he did. That was a very specific thing to accuse someone of to get them in trouble. This man did research and filed a complaint that was well thought out. This isn't Asperger's syndrome. You're the only one doing anything about it. Keep going. So my teen son Josh was having a movie night with 3 friends the other day. One of the boys, Matt, is new. I haven't seen him many times before, so I don't know much about him except that he's slightly younger than most of my son's friends. The movies Josh and the other boys wanted to watch were horror or superhero themed. Apparently, Matt tried to come up with some other movie genres and ideas but was shut down. I'm making some hot dogs in the kitchen and Matt comes in looking kinda sheepish. I asked him what's up and he says he's really scared to watch the movies Josh and the other boys want to see because he has epilepsy and a lot of the films they choose have strobe light or flashing light sequences. I asked them why not to tell them and he said he was afraid that once they knew they would try to trigger him on purpose for the lols. Now, I know my son like the back of my hand. He would never do anything like that. I tried to reassure Matt of this, but he just shook his head and basically begged me to switch just one movie so he could watch it with them, and then he'd leave early. His logic being that if they didn't listen to him about it, they'd defer to my authority. I thought about it, but had to say no because I doubted my son and his friends would agree to switch the movie without providing a good reason. I suggested to Matt that if he really didn't feel safe telling them to just close his eyes if he suspected a strobe or flash scene was coming up, and that if he still didn't feel safe, he could just go home. I guess Matt decided it wasn't that big of a deal after all because he went back in there and didn't complain. But when my wife got home and I told her about how the day went, she was appalled that I didn't switch the movie or confront our son about how they were treating Matt. I told her that it was no big deal and that the day went fine. The guys were old enough to handle conflicts on their own. She disagreed and won't back down on this issue. I think I did fine, to be honest. As I said, no harm was done, and I don't believe in getting in between my kids' conflicts with their friends. Am I the idiot? Edit, I did get a hold of his parents the following morning to confirm because I did have some concerns. He is, in fact, epileptic, but more prone to petit mal rather than grand mal seizures, so I guess it's not as bad as it could be. You expect a bunch of teenage boys to respect their friend and understand epilepsy when you, an adult, don't? You are the idiot. This poor kid was probably so worried he'd be judged and ridiculed for this, and you dismissed that. It would have been so easy to talk to your son alone and somehow have them switch the movie and not make it a big deal. Matt has a serious medical condition. It's not a not good enough reason for them to change the movie. And close his eyes when he suspects flashing lights? Seriously? Horror movies have jump scares for a reason. It's supposed to catch you off guard. Would you really risk a kid triggering his epilepsy because you didn't think it was a big deal? Be the adult you're supposed to be. And I'm sure it was a big deal to Matt. He came to you instead of confronting your son directly for that exact reason. He needed the change of movie. Instead, you decided it wasn't a big deal. It sounds like this scenario of intentionally triggering for lols has happened to him previously. He probably thinks other boys would do the same. The father's response of, "My boy would never," is beyond naive. As a teacher, I hear this from parents all the time. Even when I and multiple people witness the behavior, the parent still can't admit it. What a demonstration of callousness. Josh has every reason to worry if the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Shame on you. Epilepsy is real, and it would have taken zero effort on your part to just pick a different movie. Instead, you ignored Matt's medical and social concerns and created a situation where Matt was at extra risk of a seizure. Crazy. You have no right to decide how bad it is for him. I, male 47, have a son, Jake, who has his own son, Mike, kindergartner. Jake's mother and I only had a short-term relationship, and it was an accidental pregnancy. To be blunt, I never wanted to be a parent, particularly not at 21. However, Jake's mother did, and it wasn't my decision. Although we've always kept the peace, things have always been icy between us due to that. However, I always tried to do the right thing by Jake. I would have him every other weekend, and for a month during the summer, would do my best to deliver on anything he asked of me, treat him kindly and try to be a good father. Then, at a certain point, his mother married a guy Jake hated, and I had him move in with me once he was a young teen. I won't lie, I wasn't cut out to be a parent. I love Jake, but I just hated parenting. I did it anyway since he was my son. We have a very good relationship, and I've never shirked any responsibility to him. Jake also became a father at 21. However, he's all for it and is happily married to Mike's mother. I also got him into my electrician's union and set him up with some good jobs, so he was on much better footing than I was for a child. Back then, we had a long talk and I told him, "Jake, being a parent is a very different life. It's hard, exhausting, and on a day-to-day basis, you don't really get to do what you want to do very much. It will be a long time before you no longer have that kind of responsibility." Then the conversation turned to how I'd help him. I told him, "No, I'm retired from parenting. I'm turning back to my own life. He has his own home and union job, is engaged, and is adult enough to decide to have a baby. He's an adult now. He's the parent. I'll be around, and if there are any emergencies, obviously I'll do what I can, but I won't be an active grandparent." I've largely held to it. I've been traveling a lot, I have a girlfriend and hobbies, and to be blunt, I'm doing all the things I didn't get to do in my 20s. Do I see Jake and his family? Yes. However, I rarely agree to babysit. Jake resents that I don't go to Mike's games, they tend to conflict with my weightlifting club, and that I'm pretty hands-off with Mike. Things came to a head last week when Mike had a baseball tournament, and I refused to go because I had plans to take a scuba class with my girlfriend, which admittedly could be rescheduled. I didn't tell Jake this, but I spent so many Saturdays bored out of my skull watching Little League when Jake was little. I always cheered loudly, was crazy supportive, and never let on that it was like watching paint dry, but this is no longer my responsibility. So I told him, "Jake, I spent 20 years parenting, that's enough." He then yelled at me that I was always jetting around, playing like a teenager and not putting him first. I told him that no, I wasn't. I did that for 20 years to get him on his feet as an adult. I've done that and can go back to prioritizing my own life. I've spent 20 years putting Jake first and not really having much of a life. What's that BS? You are the idiot. You had him every other weekend and barely a month in the summer. For the first 13 years you were barely present. Why would you blame someone that's not there for stealing your time by being absent from your life? He did every other weekend and 1 month in summer for the first 13 years of his son's life. That's barely their parenting, not his duty, and certainly not even close to putting Jake first for 20 years. A parent's duty is to be present for their kid as much as possible. He was there as little as possible until Jake was 13. Then Jake turns 18 and OP stops being a parent. Parenthood doesn't stop at 18. He had 5 years of constant parenting? He then took the kid into his home full-time for his teenage years and raised him well enough to get a union job that probably has a pension. OP was apparently a good enough parent that his son is eager to have him involved in his and his son's lives. And anyone who thinks that full-time solo parenting from age 13 on is easy has clearly never spent much time around teenagers as an adult. He set his son up very well. I think it's safe for him to choose how much energy he wants to put into his grandkid. OP's not the idiot. Being a parent never stops, my dude. You're entitled to free time, but you can't just tell him you've checked out of parenting. You are the idiot, OP. I don't mean to be harsh, man, but if my father had turned out like you, constantly reminding me of how he was done being my dad, I'd probably cut ties with you. It's just so selfish and painful for a child to hear that. I'm surprised he hasn't already. Just tell your kid you hate him and want nothing to do with him and his kid. Then you can go and be selfish and forget you were ever a parent. I live in a city where we get several feet of snow every winter. I always clean off my sidewalk because it's the law and the right thing to do. I used to clear off the street parking in front of my house too because I didn't want to get stuck. One of my neighbours would take advantage of this and occasionally park one of his cars there until they could clean their spot, which meant I had to park down the road. I asked them not to, but they said, rightly, that no one owns the street parking. Last summer, I bought myself a Bronco. Last winter, I didn't clear the snow in front of my house either. I just packed it down with the Bronco. It was a couple of lumpy little icebergs in front of my house. He tried parking on it, but he got stuck on the soft snow between the icebergs and had to spend almost an hour digging himself out. He tried complaining to the city bylaw enforcement, but was told that the sidewalks were all I was responsible for since I didn't own the parking spot on the street. I got to park in my spot all winter with no problems. It was kind of funny in the spring, all the other snow in the area had melted, but my icebergs made it into May. Yesterday he talked to me after work. He asked if I was planning on cleaning the snow this coming winter. I said no because I bought a car that didn't require me to do so. He said everyone else on the street cleaned in front of their houses and that I was an idiot for not following suit. I told him that when I cleaned in front of my house, sometimes idiots would park there, taking advantage of my work. He didn't like that at all. Yes, well played, well called out too. Your neighbour wants you to clean a spot for him to park in. If not, he wouldn't care what you did. Not the idiot for failing to do extra work you don't need to do so your neighbour can benefit. What a beautiful example of malicious compliance. I salute you. Your neighbour would violate the dibs unspoken laws here in Chicago. People shovel out their cars from their spots on the street, and after moving the car, they put old lawn chairs, etc. in the cleared spot to establish their dibs on the spot. Woe to anyone that takes the spot. The violating car is apt to be vandalized for breaking the law. Ha! Good for you.